I'm going to guess that when you hear the name Biz Markie, one of a few things come to mind. Those things being one of a select few of his music videos or records. I'm not proud to say this, but before starting my research just a few days ago, I was a person who only knew Biz Markie as the guy who made the song Just a Friend, and I figured he must have looked something like this based on this art. Finger in his nose and everything. I have never listened to any other single song by this man until like a week ago, maybe. I am pointing this out in this way to emphasize just how impactful, important, and intriguing the story of Biz Markie was once I started to really dig into it. I've always wondered what his other music was like, considering how much I love the song Just a Friend, and I happen to be a big fan of hip-hop culture and the origins of hip-hop anyway, so I figured making this video and sharing this with you guys was a great excuse to do so. Today, I am stoked to show you a glimpse into the life and career of Marcel Theo Hall, better known as Biz Markie. Just a quick heads up before we properly begin, I'm going to be using the documentary titled All Up in the Biz as a core foundation for this video. I will talk more about that documentary in particular towards the end of this video, but I will be referring to it a lot as the doc or the documentary. So just so you know, All Up in the Biz is what I'm referring to. Now that that's settled, Marcel Hall was born in 1964 in Harlem, New York to both parents, but his mother unfortunately passed away while he was very young. His father was unable to properly care for the both of them, the doc citing that they were living in a tent under a bridge at one point. The circumstances being what they were, eventually interference stepped in and Biz ended up placed in a foster home on Long Island in New York. This would have been sometime in the earlier half of the 1970s. Both of the foster parents appear in the documentary and share several stories about Marcel as a child, describing him as a very funny and quick-witted kid. When you consider the work Biz would go on to create, this makes a lot of sense. Biz has explained how his foster parents strongly encouraged listening to music in the house, stating that they'd never be annoyed with the noise like other parents might be, and ask him to turn it down. This environment in the home seemed to truly allow him to harbor a love and appreciation for music. What kind of music was he listening to, you might wonder? Well, being a teenager in Long Island between the mid-70s and early 80s like he was, Marcel found himself exposed to hip-hop from his peers, especially from a fella by the name of Dap, according to Marcel's foster brother, who goes by Diamond Shell. If you're interested in a video about Diamond, leave a comment below. They both grew up not only loving the rapping part of hip-hop, but fully embraced beatboxing as a way to express themselves through the art form. The people local to Marcel seemed to be very impressed with his abilities and entertained by him, in no small part thanks to the people supporting him like his foster parents and brother, and the friends and acquaintances he was making throughout his middle and high school years. According to those around him at the time, Marcel had a knack for getting around all over Long Island and probably beyond, making connections with all kinds of different people. He was a social butterfly. One of the most notable people he would meet at this time would be Rakim, one half of the most interesting and respected duos of hip-hop's golden era, the other half being, of course, Eric B. Rakim recalls the story of meeting Biz in his high school cafeteria, which was a school Biz did not even go to, in which he instantly made some friends in apparently a not-so-welcoming environment. They quickly found themselves beatboxing and rapping respectively, surrounded by a bunch of students looking at the spectacle. This will be the first time that the timeline gets a little muddy for a second, but the things I can confirm are that Biz graduates from Longwood High School in 1982. Right around this same time, he begins working for local nightclubs in New York, getting his start literally from the ground up, handing out flyers for a local club called the Latin Quarter. Those of you who are aware, the Latin Quarter is a very important spot for early hip-hop culture, especially in New York City, and other kinds of music too, jazz, Apparently, it also very much featured stuff like reggae and salsa music, as well as hosting some huge names like Frank Sinatra, Ella Fitzgerald, the Carter family. All kinds of very important musical figures came to play at this club. It was a pretty big deal. Shortly after getting his start handing out flyers, being the charismatic man that he was, Biz begins performing in the Latin Quarter and several other clubs in the area. It must have had a pretty great reception because he begins performing at these places very often, according to the documentary. You'd see him there all the time. This was going on during the early to mid 1980s, and during this time, Biz would meet several other important and influential figures in his life. People like DJ and producer Marley Marl and the human beatbox Dougie Fresh. He took a lot of inspiration from Dougie in his beatboxing, as he was truly one of a kind, and was able to do some very difficult beatboxing techniques while making it look incredibly easy. In the documentary, he explains that upon meeting him, Biz basically started following him around, showing up to his house uninvited and often, which sounds like it probably annoyed Doug at the time, but he seems to look back on that fondly. Biz also meets Marley Marl around this time and would go on to work with him on his first and only properly released EP, which is called Make the Music With Your Mouth, Biz. That was released in 1986 on a record label called Prism. Side note, there is reportedly a bootleg CD label also called Prism that would release like Dream Theater and Rush Records. Might look into this one day. Anyhow, before releasing full-on hip-hop, the real Prism Records released what Wikipedia refers to as R&B and disco releases. Based on the releases posted for Prism on Discogs, they're under electronic and funk and soul, which I would say is probably a little more accurate, but either way the music is very funky, dancey, uses early electronic drums, and will put you in this sort of trance state if you listen for long enough. Shortly after the release of that EP, but still in 1986, Biz would formally become a member of the Juice Crew. The Juice Crew was a hip-hop collective comprised of several members throughout their time, but the main two leaders of it, from what I can tell, are DJ Marley Marl and Mr. Magic, who was a DJ that hired Marley to work for him after hearing his skills on the turntable. The same year that Biz joins the crew, Prism Records essentially gets morphed into Cold Chillin' Records, which is ran by Len Fichtelberg, who was one of the founders of the original Prism Records, and Tyrone Williams, who essentially acted as a manager for those on Cold Chillin' and those in the Juice Crew, which now included Biz Markie. At this point, Cold Chillin' Records essentially acts as a self-serving or in-house label for the members of the Juice Crew, although they would release records for people outside of the crew occasionally as well. Speaking of the Juice Crew, a few notable artists that were in Biz's life that I have not mentioned yet are Big Daddy Kane, Cool G Rap, and Roxanne Shante. He would work with all of these people at one time or another, and they definitely seem to have respect for one another. During his time at Cold Chillin', Biz would release several studio albums and singles spanning from 1986 to 1995 when Cold Chillin' would come to an end. But we'll get to that in just a bit. Before that, in fact, we need to discuss two major events that took place during his time with the label, and a little tidbit at the end about some interpersonal drama within the label. The first of these being the release of the song Just a Friend in 1989, which brought Biz Markie to the Billboard Hot 100. The song peaking at number 9 for 1 week in March of 1990, it stayed in the top 10 throughout the rest of the year, ending the year at number 94. The single would also be released on the album, The Biz Never Sleeps, which landed on the Billboard Top 200 itself, peaking at number 66, and it reached number 9 on the Hip Hop and R&B album chart. If you only know Biz Markie for one song or one album, this is almost certainly the track, and this is the album that it is on. This was huge for everyone on the label, but most of all, Biz. Naturally, the documentary spends a chunk of time discussing the writing, production, and release of Just a Friend, and has a scene of Biz's wife showing off the notebook in which the original lyrics were written down. It is very cool. His wife's name is Tara Hall, by the way, and we are going to cover their history shortly. I'm going to take one brief second to again shout out the All Up in the Biz documentary. If you have not seen it and this story intrigues you, please go check it out. I will talk more about it at the end. Back to the biz. While it took a minute for the single to reach its peak on the charts, it did not take long for Biz to become as much of a household name as he is. The documentary claims that the success that it brought him essentially made Biz, or at the very least made Biz feel like a full-on pop star. This also brought Biz more money than he had ever seen before, which he was no stranger to splurging on designer clothes from people like Dapper Dan, who claims that Biz was one of his most regular customers, by the way, and custom jewelry made from a famous NYC jeweler called Benny the Jeweler, who has made pieces for many rappers and artists. While none of Biz's other releases under Cold Chillin' would quite reach the level of success that Just a Friend did, one song in particular remains infamous for helping set the precedent for how sampling would be treated in a court of law. Biz's song Alone Again, released in 1991 as a single and as a track on the album titled I Need a Haircut, which peaked at number 113 on the Billboard Top 200, contains a sample of the song Alone Again, Naturally, by Gilbert O'Sullivan. If you're still watching this video, I assume you are probably familiar and in support of sampling, at least to some degree, and I am right there with you. Unfortunately, however, in this instance, the song was released before an agreement could ever be reached to clear the sample. According to my research, when something like this would happen prior to this, the case would be settled in some way or another outside of court. In this case, the label jumped the gun on releasing the album, and neither party was willing to back down or entertain an agreement. Biz Markie was found guilty of copyright infringement and was fined $250,000. The label was ordered to stop selling the song in any capacity immediately, causing all remaining copies to be pulled from shelves. The tidbit I mentioned from earlier is too large a topic to truly fully cover in this video, but dating as far back as 1986, Biz would be a part of some early diss-style records, specifically to members of Boogie Down Productions, which was a New York City-based hip-hop crew which consisted of members like KRS-One and D-Nice. DJ Kenny Parker has a great video on YouTube with some little-known information on this topic that will be linked in the description. DJ Marley Marl and Biz would start to have disagreements regarding production credits in the late 1980s, which culminated in Marley Marl producing a record for a guy named Masta Ace. The record was created with the intention of featuring both Biz and Ace, literally being called Me and the Biz, but due to the disagreements going on between the two, Biz would not show up for the session. The record was then created with Masta Ace doing the parts that were written for Biz. That record and performance would then be used, or at least perceived to be used, as a way of mocking Biz Markie. The record would come out in 1990 as a part of Ace's debut album, Take a Look Around, which came out on Cold Chillin' Records. Clearly, it had become a complicated and, more often than not, punishing process to be an artist on Cold Chillin' and to release recorded music in general. It is now the next day. As you can probably imagine, all of this was not sitting well with Biz. Despite the album following this incident being titled All Samples Cleared, which was released in 1993, as a jab to Gilbert for the lawsuit, he is quoted in the doc as wanting to essentially move on from the label due to all the diss record complications and legal problems he was going through. He decides around this time to stop focusing on recorded music as his primary source of income, and he begins a path down several different ventures, which include being a pretty big-name DJ, featuring on other people's records, providing cameos on many shows and movies, putting out the occasional album or single on various other labels, that goes as far back as 1995, and he becomes a pretty diverse entertainment personality. Getting into the thick of all of that would cause this video to be much longer than I had intended, so I'm going to abstain from doing that and just highlight some of the most notable projects he was a part of. If diving deeper into that topic is something you're interested in, please let me know. Musically, Biz was involved in featuring on records from Big Daddy Kane, the Beastie Boys, De La Soul, the Spin Doctors as part of the Space Jam soundtrack, Chris Rock, and Nick Cannon, as well as making songs for various shows and video games. On the video side of things, we see Biz in a role in the movie Men in Black 2, the show Empire, the movie Sharknado 2, what's that about? He was on Sesame Street, Yo Gabba Gabba, and for all my cartoon heads out there, Biz was on SpongeBob, Flapjack, Gumball, Adventure Time, and Cartoon Network's Mad. There are not many places Biz was not willing to go to entertain others. I should reference now Biz's appearance on a game show called Celebrity Fit Club, which was a show designed for the contestants to push themselves into losing weight. The documentary shows clips of the judges complimenting how seriously Biz took the challenge, and not long after, it starts to cover a couple of other major points in Biz's life, which are his health and his family. The timeline here gets kind of fuzzy again, so I'll be using some pretty broad strokes when referring to dates unless otherwise stated. Biz was obviously aware of his health and was willing to publicly acknowledge and work on it, as shown by his appearance on the Celebrity Fit Club program in 2005. From there, circa 2008, he meets his soon-to-be wife Tara Hall. I say soon-to-be, but it would really be around another 10 years before they would actually become married. The only recounting of this time that I am aware of comes directly from Tara herself, who appears a lot in the documentary. She explains that for some number of months in this time, her and Biz basically fell head over heels for each other, spending a lot of time together. They never made it truly formal, but went as far as buying a house and making decisions about the decorations and whatnot together. At which time, Biz supposedly springs a marriage proposal on Tara, who feels conflicted about dedicating her life to somebody so early in her own life. Biz hears her out and very nicely suggests that she go live her life and promised that he would be there waiting when she was ready. Also, around this time, but before the marriage proposal, Biz and his family and close acquaintances find out that Biz has diabetes. Tara recalls that he tackles this issue head on as best as he can, considering the sweet tooth he apparently had. But similarly to his appearance on Celebrity Fit Club, he takes the situation very seriously and begins to work on his diet and implementing regular exercise, buying exercise equipment to put in his house. After this, Tara goes on to live her life and ends up with a kid of her own. She doesn't go into much detail about this time, but does explain how around 10 years passes after the proposal before they find each other in one another's lives again, and they do end up reconnecting. Biz ends up taking her to the house that they had picked out, and I assume that he owned, and much of the house was apparently left the exact same as it was when Tara did. Tara says that Biz claims that he knew that she'd be back. They got married not long after that in 2018. According to Tara, Biz was a great stepfather, a wonderful husband, and an overall beautiful man. Sadly, some heartbreaking news dropped in 2021, announcing Biz was in the hospital under severe conditions. Rumors had been spreading around the time, to the chagrin of the family, but Biz Markie, Marcel Theo Hall, unfortunately will pass away on July 16th, 2021. Watching the documentary, you'll find out that Biz was in the hospital as early as April 2020 due to falling into a diabetic coma. He will suffer a stroke during this coma, which will ultimately render him beyond able to recover. His wife Tara claims to have been there every single day while he was in the hospital, making sure he was looked after and had company his entire time there. Rest in peace, Biz Markie. You continue to inspire generations of people today. You can consider this video over now, but I do want to take a moment here at the end to just mention a couple of things, some related to the documentary, some not. Firstly, I want to shout out the All Up in the Biz documentary. I have probably brought it up too many times, but I wanted to make it crystal clear that a lot of this info comes from that documentary, and now that we're at the end, I want to tell you how great it really is. I don't want to claim it's a perfect documentary, but really, other than wishing they had elaborated some things a little more clearly, or spent a little more time covering certain aspects, especially in the last third of his career, but other than that, I can't find much to criticize. This documentary is made wonderfully, it's entertaining, it's funny, it's sad, it's everything you expect out of a good documentary. You find out in the documentary that Tara kept extremely detailed notes of his status in the hospital in a composition book, and they interweave the timeline of his time in the hospital with the timeline of his life from the beginning until they kind of meet at the end. It also features some amazing cameos from people like Rakim, Fat Joe, Dougie Fresh, and many others. I'll spare you any more details about the documentary and just encourage you to please go watch it. As of writing this, it's available on Paramount Plus for streaming and Amazon Video if you want to rent or own a copy of the film. I'm not sure which of these directly supports the family more, but if you do, pick that way. Lastly, a little update for the channel. It has never had consistent uploads and it won't start just yet, but it is in the plans. I have a few more months of some life things I gotta handle, and then I hope to come back red hot. I have some ideas for more videos in this style, as well as some ideas for videos in other styles, and I have some other content that is already scheduled for a few months from now for when I do come back. If you like this style of video or have any ideas for who I can cover next, please let me know in the comments. Feel free to let me know if you'd like videos in this length range or longer and more in-depth videos as well. I would really appreciate that information. Thank you so much for watching. My name is The Lard. Rest in peace, Biz Markie.